Adventure of D may just be one of the smallest games in my collection. Of course, that also makes it very portable, which is an advantage if the game is fun and one that you want to carry with you. And don't be fooled by the small size of the box. There's a lot of stuff in here, and this stuff can create a lot of situations. There are many game elements, characters, monsters, challenges, skills. This is definitely a very compact game. This is a fantasy game for 1 to 4 players in which the players take a role of adventurers in a fantasy land, and they are trying to level up and become strong enough to face the evil wizard that has cursed the land, had cast a spell on the land, nobody can get out. And it is a competitive game, so the first player to become strong enough to defeat the evil wizard is the winner. The game can also be played in solitaire mode, which actually is the only way in which I played the game, and I was happy to see that in this game the solitaire option was not an afterthought, not something added at the end with some rushed tweaks just to write on the box that the game has a solitaire option. This game does play solitary. You can see that it works that way. So today in my review I'm going to tell you about the specific aspects of the game as it is played when you're playing it by yourself, and at the end I'll share with you my impressions about playing the game this way. In this game you will use a character that will come out of this deck of 20 possible characters. You should draw one randomly. Each character has 3 stats: strength, intelligence, and agility. You begin the game with 0 points in 2 of these categories and 1 point in one of these categories. The category in which you receive a starting point is determined randomly. When you determine the category, then you will place a card of this type by that category to indicate that now you have a point there, and then you rotate that card when you gain new points in that skill, in that ability, and you will add other cards also to indicate your progress in other categories. Each card also starts with a special skill, which is pretty much what makes that card unique, but during the game you may be able to gain further skills, in which case you simply draw another character card from the deck, a character card for each new skill, and you place it under your character card so that only the skill is visible. During the game you will also gain magic, and you will record your present level of magic by rotating this card that you place to the right of your character card. The board for the game is represented by these 12 location cards, which are placed randomly in a 4x3 matrix at the beginning of the game, so different map from game to game, which is good. Your position on the map can be represented by a paper miniature that you can cut out of these available ones. As you can see, I did not do that. I'm using this miniature here to represent my position on the board. Yes, that is the elf. She is in disguise so that the evil wizard does not figure out where she is. And your goal in this game is to defeat the evil wizard that is hiding in the Tower of Death. Now, how do you do that? Well, you will need to use these cards, which actually have many functions. There are a lot of things going on these cards. At the beginning of the game, you draw 8 of these cards that go in your hand, and when a card is in your hand, you only look at the number and color there in that corner. That's all you need at that time. The number of cards that you have in your hand is also the number of health points that you have. If you go down to 0 points in the solo game, you lose the game immediately. So you need to make sure that you have some cards in your hand. Also, in the multiplayer game, the idea is that you need to defeat the wizard before the other players do. In the solo game, you have a limited amount of turns, and if you manage to defeat the wizard by the end of the game, before the end of the game, you win, otherwise you lose the game. And the number of turns can be adjusted to increase or decrease the difficulty of the game. In order to defeat the wizard, you need to acquire a total of at least 5 in one of these 3 categories. And when you have 5, you can enter the Tower of Death and try to defeat the villain. But how do you do that? Well, each turn you will need to draw 2 random cards from the deck, and when you use the cards that way, you look at them this way, and now you look at the event printed on the card. The card will tell you the location in which you need to place the card. Plane of Sorrow. Here we have the Forest of Ruin. And there are some other rules about placement, but I don't need to get into that right now. When you look at a new event card, you can also choose to discard it, but you need to spend resources, which can be magic points or health points. But suppose that you decide to accept the new events, then the new events cover the location, and now the events represent, well, the challenge or the option that the location is offering to you. The location is not available until you get rid of the event somehow. And during your turn, you will simply travel, you will move around the land, and or you will perform actions in the location in which you are. To move to a new location, you simply move your character to an adjacent space, and in order to travel, you need to place down a card that represents the effort that you are making when traveling to the new location. Now, when you're placing a card down for that purpose, you look at the gray area here with a number and a scary ghost there, Lord of the Rings type of ghost. That is in fact a ghost that the evil wizard is sending after you. After you place that card down, you reveal a random card from the deck, and you look at that number and you compare that number with the number in the top left corner of the location in which you are. For example, here we have 4, here we have 2, that is the danger number. If the number that you drew is higher than the danger number in the location in which you are, you're safe, nothing happens, you do not encounter the ghost on that card, you discard the card, movement is over, and now you can move again or interact with the location in which you are. If you drew a card that has a number which is equal to or lower than the danger number in the location in which you are, here we have a 2, that is a 2, 2, then you do encounter the ghost has reached you, now you need to find that ghost by discarding cards from your hand, cards whose total power equals to or exceeds the power of the ghost you're fighting. Here I'm fighting a ghost with strength of 5. I could discard these 2 cards or this card here, and then I could discard, well, these cards and that ghost, and movement is over. When you defeat a ghost, you also gain magic equal to the strength of the ghost. In that case, I would have gained 5 points of magic, and magic can be spent to perform several special actions. So the idea is that when you're moving to a new location, you may spend a minimum of 1 card, the effort that you are putting in that, or more cards if you also have to fight against a ghost on your way there. After you're done with the moving procedure, you can move again or you interact with the location in which you are. Locations will allow you to perform special actions. For example, here you can discard 3 strength with different powers to gain a level of strength, or there may be challenges, enemies you need to defeat or you need to interact with. Challenges are of a specific type. This is, for example, a challenge in strength, and you have effects that apply if you lose the challenge or if you win the challenge. In this case, you would need to discard a card to lose a point of health if you lose the challenge, and there is a benefit in case you win. How you resolve the challenge? First, you take a card out of your hand and you put it down on the table. That represents your initial effort. If the cards of the same color of the challenge, in this case, for example, yellow, and yellow, you also get a bonus card immediately, which is good. Otherwise, you simply spend your card without getting anything in return. So first you spend a card, and you may get a bonus one. Then you add your stat in the category that is being tested. In this case, we have strength, yellow, so now I have a total of 7 already. Then you draw a card from the deck randomly. If the total that you have is equal to or higher than the level of the challenge, you win the challenge, otherwise you lose the challenge. In this case, with a total of 8, 1, 2, and 5. I lose the challenge because that was a challenge of level 9. Otherwise, I win the challenge, I get the benefit, and I remove the card from there. So as you can see, when you're moving, taking challenges and losing challenges, you will spend cards, your amount will go down, and you have to figure out when it is the right time to stop and rest before you go down to 0. When you rest, you will get cards back in your hand, but the number of cards that you draw at the end of the turn changes depending on the location in which you are, so also figuring out where to stop is part of the strategy. Ideally, you will want to have a full hand of 8 cards when you're entering the Tower of Death. And at that point, you take the challenges that the Tower of Death presents you with. First, in order to enter the magic barrier, again, you need 5 points in strength or intelligence or agility. In the room 1 of the tower, you need to discard a random card from your hand. This is what shock 1 means. Second room, check 1, you draw a random card, and the result is the shadow that attacks you. Here, a shadow of strength 5 is attacking me, and again, to defeat that shadow, I need to get rid of cards from my hand until I can match the strength of the shadow. If after losing, spending these cards, I can discard power cards with a total power of 8 or more, I have defeated the wizard and I win the game. And if I manage to do that before the end of the game, I win the solo game. Or if I manage to do that before the other players in a multiplayer game, I win the game. Now, something that can be a turn-off for some players in this game is the art. The art clearly is below standards that we have been used to by playing games from large professional companies such as AG, Wizards of the Coast, or Fantasy Flight. But I have to say that even though here the art clearly is below such standards, you can see that there was love that was put into it. There was attention to detail, or in any case, a desire to create a world with characters that had their own individuality. After a while, I got used to the art, to the style, to the simplified style, and I started finding it cute, so it didn't bother me anymore. As for gameplay, this is a game that clearly is very quick, very light, and very simple to play once you get used to the main concepts, and you really need to set up the game and to play it as you read the rulebook. I started reading the rulebook without the cards in front of me, and I had a hard time figuring out how to play the game. The rulebook may seem deceptively complicated, but if you're reading it with the components in front of you, then that is not a problem at all. The game has a good replay value because of the way in which the map changes, because of the way in which the cards will come out in different games, sometimes as events, sometimes as power cards. I like the fact that the characters do play in different ways from one another, and there are just many events, many creatures, challenges, monsters that you will have to face. Not to the point that the game will feel like really a three-dimensional, well-fleshed-out fantasy world, an RPG, but there is more narrative, there is more story than I would have expected when I first took the game out of the box. So, in conclusion, this is a pretty fun game, an entertaining one, and one that works well as a filler. Played at the normal level of difficulty, which is 5 turns for the solitaire player. I was able to play a game in 15-20 minutes, which is very good for a quick filler to play when you have less than half an hour available. Sometimes less if I lost horrendously early on, or if I was doing so poorly in early turns that I saw in any case I would have no chance of winning. If you're playing the beginner game with more turns, of course, it will take you longer, but it won't be long before you're playing the standard game. But this is an entertaining game. For something this simple, this light, it has more decisions and more interesting moments and choices and relevant choices for you than other very quick, light solitaire games such as Airborne in My Pocket. That is a game that I like a lot, but this one has more strategy to it. There are more decisions there. So if you're looking for a very simple, quick solitaire filler, I would say that Adventure of D can work well in that setting.